If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Friday, the 1st of August 69, I will go on a kill rampage Friday night. I will cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend.
The Zodiac Killer was born at approximately 11:20 p.m. on the night of December 20th, 1968. This is when he pulled up to a gravel turnout off Lake Herman Road where two teenagers were parked in a 61 Rambler. The man, whose name nobody knows, got out of his car and approached the two teens and then opened fire. The girl fled the car through the passenger door and the boy ran out through the driver's side door. The boy was shot in the head at point blank range, immediately falling to the ground, and the girl, as she was running away, was shot in the back 5 times, also dropping to the ground. The shooter then got back into his car and drove away. The next car to pass through the area was driven by a woman named Stella, who approached the turnout at around 11:19. When her headlights caught the two dying teenagers lying motionless and bloody, she floored the accelerator because she had spotted a police cruiser. She honked her horn and flashed her headlights until she got the cops' attention and reported what she'd seen. Now, back at the scene, responding officers and medics found the girl dead and the boy unconscious, but he was still breathing shallow breaths. He was taken to Vallejo General Hospital, where he was pronounced dead less than an hour later. The two victims were identified as Betty Lou Jensen, a 16-year-old junior at Hogan High School in Vallejo, and David Faraday, 17, a popular student and a member of the wrestling team. They had been out on their first date, and tragically, the last date either of them would ever have with anyone. The only real evidence the killer left behind were 10 spent bullet casings. Whoever shot these two young people dead was pretty much a phantom who left no trace of himself and no witnesses. And then it happened again. This time, it was 22-year-old Darlene Farron and her friend, 19-year-old Mike Mazzo. Mike and Darlene drove to Blue Rock Springs Park and parked Darlene's car in a turnout off Columbus Parkway. The headlights of another car pulled up into the lot. Then suddenly, that car's headlights went dark and it parked about 8 feet away and just sat there in silence. The driver then exited his car and switched on a high-powered flashlight. Because of this, Mike believed it was a cop, and he and Darlene got their ID cards ready. But as the man approached and shined the light into the young pair's faces, loud pops began sounding. As Mike and Darlene felt the bullets tear into their bodies, it became clear this man was no cop. And then, without a word, the shooter began walking back to his car. Both Mike and Darlene were still alive, but they were badly wounded. When help arrived, Mike was writhing in pain on the ground while Darlene sat in the driver's seat, her body stiff, her mind barely conscious. Roughly half an hour later, a telephone call came in to the Vallejo Police Department. On the other end, a male voice began speaking.
I want to report a double murder.
Nancy started to reply, but the man kept speaking, his volume increasing until Nancy went silent and just listened.
If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find the kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year.
Nancy again tried to talk, but the man cut her off once more to say in a taunting tone, "Goodbye." He then hung up. Mike would actually go on to survive the shooting, but not without lifelong physical and psychological trauma. Mike had been hardly able to make out the man who shot at them in the dark behind the blinding beam of his flashlight. On August 1st, 1969, a letter arrived in the mailroom of the San Francisco Chronicle. It began, "Dear Editor, this is the murderer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo." He then went on to provide details about the Faraday and Jensen murders. The writer also included a cipher, a message that was written in code, and he insisted that the Chronicle publish it, promising that the cipher contained his identity. And then he ended his letter with a terrifying threat. Quote, "If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Friday 1st of August 69, I will go on a kill rampage Friday night. I will cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again until I end up with 12 people over the weekend. The letter was then signed with a symbol, a circle with 2 intersecting lines cutting through it, like the crosshairs on a gun sight. The Chronicle ran an article about it and included the piece they received of the cipher. The day after that, on August 3rd, the Examiner published all 3 parts of the letter. And then on August 4th, another letter was mailed, handwritten in blue ink, clearly written by the same man. "Dear editor," it began, just like the previous trio of letters. But then the first line of the letter would create the character that would live in infamy. It was, quote, "This is the Zodiac speaking." The debut of Zodiac letter went on to say, "In answer to your asking for more details about the good times I have had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy to supply even more material. By the way, are the police having a good time with the code? If not, tell them to cheer up. When they do crack it, they will have me." Unsurprisingly, this turned out to be a lie. The decoded cipher read as follows, quote, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all that I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." But weeks passed without any additional letters from the man now calling himself the Zodiac. And then Brian Hartnell, a 20-year-old pre-law student at Pacific Union College, and his girlfriend, 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard, were relaxing on a blanket on the shores of a lake in Napa County when Brian heard some rustling off in the distance. Some distance away, Cecilia saw a man walking in their direction. The man emerged from behind the tree a minute or so later wearing a ceremonial black executioner's hood with a circle and crosshair symbol on it. This is obviously the Zodiac symbol. He was also brandishing a gun pointed right at the young couple. And at that point, the man in the hood told Brian, "I want the girl to tie you up. I'd feel much better if you were tied up." He pulled some nylon clothesline from his back pocket and handed it to Cecilia. Brian tried to get the man to keep talking, but he was mostly silent as Cecilia then took the rope and began tying Brian's hands. Brian then whispered to Cecilia that he thought he could get the man's gun from him and asked her if she minded. But Cecilia told him not to. She was too afraid. So he tightened the bindings and then tied Cecilia up. Brian asked the hooded man if his gun was really loaded. The man removed the clip to show him the gun was fully loaded. The man then reholstered his gun, and Brian turned to Cecilia and began speaking before suddenly feeling searing pain in his back, accompanying by a metallic chomping sound. The man had begun stabbing him in his back. The man then stood upright, moved over to Cecilia, and began plunging his knife into her as she tried to turn to avoid it. The knife entered multiple parts of Cecilia's body as both she and Brian lay helpless in the eerie late afternoon. In the middle of this chaos, the man stabbed Cecilia at least 10 times, and when he was done, the man walked away and disappeared, just as casually as he'd appeared. Brian and Cecilia then began trying to get loose. Cecilia was in tremendous pain, but she was lucid. The two finally managed to get their hands free, but Cecilia was in too much pain to move. Brian began the 1,000-foot trek from the blanket where they were stabbed to the roadside of Knoxville Road. But he eventually did make it, and he flagged down Park Ranger Dennis Land, who called for help and then accompanied Brian back to the site where Cecilia was still conscious but had bled out significantly. After authorities arrived at the scene, they found that Brian's white Volkswagen was parked where they'd left it, and drawn on the passenger door was a circle with crosshairs through it, and the following text: Vallejo, 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27th, 69, 6:30, by knife. It was the same man who had killed David and Betty Lou Jensen, killed Darlene Farron, and wounded Mike. The man who was writing letters to the press. The man who was now calling himself the Zodiac. I think Zodiac reveled in being a phantom killer, like the kind he read about in fiction. He was creating a real-world mystery to which only he knew the solution. That's the end of our unsolved serial killers cases, and we will see you next time with another mini-series.